Deviance by Hilary Waterstreet, Sociology 1301, Professor George. Deviance has a very basic definition, but is actually much more in depth. It is the act of violating social norms. Typically, when people hear that, it sounds as if they are breaking a law or something that has an actual consequence, but that is not always the case. Deviance can be a difference in culture or just something that sets you apart from the majority. So, the question I want to begin with in this presentation is, what is deviance? As said on the slide, deviance can be defined as a violation of social norms. That's very basic and generic. This means that anything can be described as deviance. There's no specific constraints on what is truly deviance. There is no such middle ground. That means something is either deviant or it is not deviant. But deviance can vary in society. And what I mean by this is in America, Christianity may be the dominating religion. In something such as Buddhism, or being an atheist is considered deviant. But while in the Middle East, Islam may be the dominant religion, and having Christian faith is actually considered deviance. So that means that it varies in different areas based on their different cultures. The pictures on the screen represent the deviance can be good or bad. Looking at the innovation logo, I chose this because thinking outside the box is considered deviance. That means that you're creating a new idea which is not accepted by society yet because it's new and it's not something that's commonly known. And then the other picture is someone being arrested because that's a crime, and crime is also considered deviance, but I'll go more into that specifically later on. This is a diagram that fully breaks down deviance within many subcategories to get a full understanding of what deviance is. Because people have so many different ideas of deviance, anything can be broken down. People break it down into several categories and theories, and this just gives a better understanding and allows it to be presented in a clear light that's also quite colorful. This is just a compiled list of key words that you'll need to know to understand the general basis of deviance and what's going to be going on. So now I'm going to describe my pictures. The first picture I chose was a person that is set aside from a group. This is because they are being deviant, they're being pointed at, they're being called out, they are against the group. That just puts them aside, and that's the main definition, generic basics of deviance. Now the second one is showing social control through the ages. So in the 16th century, many people acted a certain way in the social constraints because of religion. So they behaved in ways that they may not typically have because religion put that constraint on them. But now it's showing in the 21st century, people do the same, but it's not because of religion, it's because of the watchfulness of the government. In that typically they may have deviant behaviors, but that's not the case here because they are being watched, and so it makes them uncomfortable. Many people consider deviance and crime to be the same thing, but that's nowhere near the case. Crime can be considered deviance, but deviance is not crime. So what I mean by this is crime is punishable by the law, and that's deviance. But while something else that may just be considered weird is also deviance, but you will not be facing any legal issues or won't get charged for anything. It is important to know the difference for the understanding of the concept because of all the different amounts of crimes that are deviance, but deviance that is not crime. Parts of deviance. Deviance is broken up into criminal deviance and non-criminal deviance. The difference within the two is criminal deviance is breaking the law, and non-criminal deviance is just going out against social norms. Let's go through the different types of criminal deviance. Street crimes includes violent and property crimes. Hate crimes caused by the bias against race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, or disability. White-collar crimes committed by high-status people as a part of their occupation. Corporate crimes committed by executives to benefit themselves and their company. Cyber crimes, illegal activities that are conducted online. Organized crimes, acts of people and groups that supply illegal goods and services for profit. Victimless crimes, acts that violate laws, but those involved do not consider themselves as victims. So the other type of crime is non-criminal deviance. This does not break any laws, and you will not get arrested for this. For an example, mixing religion, culture, and differences. If a person is a homosexual in a small conservative town, they will most likely be considered deviants because they're going against what that small town has set to be the norm. Now, who gets to decide what is deviance? This is a question many people ask because who gets to pick what's normal and what's not normal? Well, that would be the determinants. The determinants are the group of people who get to determine who sets the trends and what behavior is normal. That would be the groups with authority, public attitudes and behaviors, and laws. And this is because the laws and the authority, they are the ones that get to put the formal in confines. Because, as I said in the beginning slides, deviance can be informal or formal. So for the formal one to stay enacted, it's within the groups of authorities and the laws. Because most people are law-abiding citizens, they follow this very heavily. But the informal deviance is typically followed by the public behaviors and attitude and how an idea is perceived by the majority and how they react to it. So how do we know all this crime is actually occurring? It is important to know the different organizations because they track different type of data about the crimes. The pictures I use are for source of crime statistic parts because this part's heavily overlooked, but they actually offer a lot to the situation and determine against what is victim reported crimes and what is police crimes. So now looking at two types of deviances. There's positive deviance and negative deviance. So these are just the basic rundowns of the differences when it meets the eye, and to call them positive and negative is actually very deceptive because a positive deviance can actually have a negative effect on people. So let's start with positive deviance, also known as overconformity. So this is just where someone takes a social norm and they take it to the extreme. An example would be anorexia. To take the social norm of being skinny and in shape and they amplify it and become completely obsessed with it to the fact that it's very unhealthy and they put their own health at risk. And this will also be considered a nun. In most places, it's accepted to be very dedicated to your religion and have that within you. But for someone to dedicate their complete life and give up husband and children and dedicate themselves to their Lord or to their God or whoever they serve, that's a very extreme in society's views. And so that makes it social deviance. But now, giving us a brief skim of the negative, also known as underconformity. This is where someone just does not care about the social norm that's set and they just continue to do whatever they feel they want to do. For example, obesity and failing students. So when looking at failing students, typically most students are B and C students, but a failing student does not care that there's that expectation to be a B or C student and they just do not do their job. Which is different from a perfect student because they take that B and C and they try to go above it and be a 100% student. And then the other example is obesity. This is because the people that are obese, although they may care about their weight, do they not care enough rather than to eat the food and to look the appearance that they are. And so that's what makes them negative deviants because they do not care about that social value of being skinny. Now going more in depth on good deviance. These are just some examples showing that good deviance can be good or bad that I mentioned earlier. An example of good deviance that is good is creation of new ideas. For example, Elon Musk. He did SpaceX, he made the Tesla, he's making 3D animations, he's doing all these advances in sciences and technology that's never been seen before. And so to many people it's very scary and it's very new. And so society hasn't fully accepted it because it is very scary because it's not accessible to everyone. It's not fully accepted by society, making it deviant. And then the second one is anorexia, again, as I mentioned earlier. And I'll go further in depth on my example of Demi Lovato in later slides. So when looking at my two pictures, I just did a light bulb for the new idea of new inventions and for Elon Musk, which you'll see a video later. And then I did a picture of a girl obviously with body dysmorphia because she is looking and seeing this fat image because of what society has taught her. Now looking at Glee. Glee is the show of the clip I decided to use to show positive deviance. To give a little backstory, this girl that's of a little heavier weight just made the cheerleading team. And she's getting all this pressure around her to be skinny so that she can fit in with the group. And eventually she tries to conform to it, but she ends up not being able to. So becomes the first considered obese cheerleader. And she goes against the social norm, and she's deviant in her firm to stay and to be healthy rather than act the way the other cheerleaders are to be skinny.
Mercedes.
This is healthy. Chicken breast in a salad, dressing on the side.
You have a week to lose 10 pounds. It's like having to lose one of my butt cheeks. Look at what I'm eating. Peeled celery. And for breakfast, I had Splenda. Look, Mercedes, now that we're cheerleaders, we're finally part of the in crowd. We have a place at the table. You don't have to beg underneath for scraps of attention. Don't screw it up.
I'm pretty sure my cat's been reading my diary. Hey guys, can I ask you something? How do you manage to stay so skinny?
The Sylvester Master Cleanse.
Water, maple syrup or glucose, lemon, acid, cayenne pepper, irritates bowels, and a dash of Ipecac, a vomiting agent. I haven't had a solid meal since 1987.
Sometimes I add a teaspoon of sand.
That can't be healthy. Who cares? You can either feel terrible and look great or get kicked off the team when that reporter gets here.
This is my second example of positive deviance, showing that the advances Elon Musk has made in our side of the gaming world and the 3D animation world, and just about how it's a new idea that not many people have heard of and how he's going in further depth about it.
Right now we interact with computers in a very unnatural sort of 2D way. And what I can do is I can go and grab it, and I can rotate it. And then what I can do is I can put another hand in there, and I can zoom. Or I can zoom in and out. And then you can also spin it. So this is kind of fun.
So this is just a short clip just showing that he's kind of introducing this idea, but how it hasn't been socially accepted yet because it's so brand new. So this is where I'm going to talk about further about anorexia and Demi Lovato and how it connects, because she's one of the most known for the celebrities to have anorexia because of societal pressures. Because when she first started and she was a bit on the heavier side, although not heavy in the least, in the Disney world, she was told that she would be made more hireable, she would fit in with her other actors, and Disney endorsed this idea of her being skinny. And so then she took that to the extreme, and although she tried to follow the norms, it got so involved. So although a person can be going for deviance they can be deviant with the intention to not be, in the end, if they do take it to the extreme, it is still considered deviance. And because anorexia is a mental disease, it can actually be taken as a negative in positive deviance. Now going to actual bad deviance. Bad deviance is just when a situation, style, personality is disregarded and not followed by a person or group. An example of this can be obesity. In My 600-Pound Life, which I'll later show, it discusses about how these people, they have so much going on in their life that they completely ignore the social value of being skinny or being in shape, and how they are just struggling with this and their weight, by how it's consumed them, and they can no longer follow that social normal, and they are acting in deviance. And then the second type is robbery, because bad deviance is any crime. And robbery is just one example. It can be robbery, fraud, murder, any street or any crime I mentioned earlier discussed. And then the picture I chose, this is deviance, bad deviance, just because they completely do not care about any social expectation put upon them. Their hairstyle, their age, their piercings, their makeup, their clothing, none of that falls into the social standards, and they know that, and they are still choosing to act in a way that's deviant and express themselves rather than be confined by society. So here's a clip from My 600-Pound Life, just showing about how they are so consumed that they don't even really look at societal standards.
Everything changed for us because my dad kicked my mom and all of us out. Things got worse between my mom and dad. My daddy was going through some things. I wouldn't say he put us out the house. He put my mom out the house, and we decided to go with her. I mean, she's my mama. But that's when all of us started to get much closer, because we had to. We all had to be a team. And my mama, she did what she had to do to take care of us. So we went to stay with my aunt for about a month, and my mom got her own apartment. But we all worked together, so we had what we needed. But after my parents broke up, like we did what we wanted.
They knew who the boss was. My daddy ran the show.
Once he was gone, it was like we felt like we had no say so anymore. We especially didn't listen to him.
And the one big thing that we all got away with no one watching or disciplining us, was eating. It was the three of us, me, Rashawn, and Brandy, who started eating more. And that's the way it was for a few years. Until we all graduated high school. And by then, everybody had put on a lot of weight.
By the time I was 18, I was already 600 pounds. And Brandy was around 17 then. And she was getting to 500 pounds at a time. But Clarence was always the smallest between us three. And was just around 350 at the time. So he started to have to do things for us and take care of us.
So this clip just gives a basic rundown about how these people have so much going on in their own personal life that they can completely disregard what society's really telling them they should follow and what they should look like. Now moving on to the strength theory. So the basic rundown of the strength theory is that it's popular in many disadvantaged places because these people feel as if they had gotten an under opportunity compared to others, and so it was harder for them to take the same route and to get this equal success. Basically, these people want the material success, but they do not feel they have the effort or the ability to get the necessities to actually have the success because society does not set them up for it. And this is in line with the anomie theory, which I will later discuss. But it's just the idea that society has ultimately failed them, and so they have to do things such as robbery to get it themselves. Now, to describe this little funny picture I have chosen, the brain is asking what a strain is because this brain is obviously not straining. They're not going through the hard work to achieve what's going, and the strainer is looking at the brave, talking about how they have a theory, and they have the negative emotions of the brain thinking that they are at such a disadvantage and they can't do this. Continuing on the strain theory. So I answered the main question, why the strain theory connects with low economic areas. And that's because these people feel they are blocked from culturally accepted expectations and goals, so they become frustrated and act out. So there are many goals or many expectations society has, for example, having the best car, new phone, and education, stuff like that. And so these people feel like it is so hard for them to achieve it because of the position they've been put in or they've been born into, and so they feel as if they need to act out or steal to get the phone or to bribe or to do many other things to get themselves within the place they need to be to achieve these goals. And they typically believe it's hard for them, so they don't really want to work for it because it's much more work with the payoff that a person that puts in the average amount of work would also receive. And so that's why the little funny cute picture at the bottom is just a guy stealing, because that's typically what they do. Typically they aren't the ones committing hate crimes or stuff like that. They're typically either committing murders because they feel that's necessary to get to where they need to, or they're robbing to achieve these goals and expectations society has set and stuff like that. But typically their crimes aren't out of hate or something like that. It's more out of this need to try to get to the place they need to be. And so now to read off my graphic organizer and to kind of explain it. Some societies provide people with clear life goals. So we're in America. People want to live that American dream. That's what they're hinting at here. And that's this goal that society has placed on them. But not everyone has the means of achieving that goal. So if you're born into a low economic area or a low family, you don't always have the education and stuff like that readily at your fingertips, as many other people do. And so it's harder for them. So the pressure to conform and succeed leads to deviant acts being committed. Okay, so what that means is that these people are placed under such immense pressure that to achieve these goals that they know they can't, so they act out. They rob, they steal, they murder, they do something that they think can get them further or closer to achieving these goals, but it's not necessarily, or it's not the right path to take it off. And so that's why some people will commit these crimes when responding to a social situation. So as I said earlier, the strength theory connects to the fundamentalist theory of connection. So the strength theory deviance is natural. It is outgrowing of values, normals, and structure of society. And is proposed by Merton. So when looking to the right at Merton's diagram. There are, as I said, there are 5 stages. There are five modes of adaptation. And so, when looking based on how it's institutionalized in the cultural goals, and if they accept them and if they reject them, that determines how they're going to react to the situation. And then there's a whole complete new goals and new means, and that's on the spectrum of rebellion, where they completely go against what society says. So, based on the cultural goals and the institutionalism, that's how you determine how you are going to react. Either conformity, innovation, ritualism, retreatism, or rebellion. Now looking at the concept of autonomy, which was also in our keywords. It's a condition in which people are not sure how to behave because of absent, conflicting, and confusing moral goals, moral and social norms. And this is because one group can be telling someone something, and another group can be telling someone else, and so it's very contradicting and very confusing, and so it can kind of leave the person to be confused on how they really should act. And this was proposed by Durkheim, who is on your right. That's what that sociologist, that's him, who proposed this concept of autonomy, because people are very confused on how to act when they're hearing 2 different ways, and so there's no way to conform if you don't know which one you're conforming to. So, to look at this, keep in mind that norms are guidelines and expectations in society. They're not right or wrong, but as members of society, we determine at any given moment in time or history the makeup of the norms. So this is the breakdown showing how the norms and groups are made. So when looking at norms are set by the determinants, either the formal policy or law, and that's the authority, which we mentioned earlier, the power of the government, or there's the value, beliefs, and attitudes of the people. And this is a majority of people that push a certain belief, value, or attitude, and how the majority of them respond and agree, and then that's put on others who may not agree to act the same way, even though they may not always. And then looking at the groups. The groups are made of individuals with strong opinions who the majority band together and they create one opinion that they believe should be socially accepted because everyone accepts them. And then it also goes into the social structure. For example, most rich people are able to set it easier because of the money they have and the positions they have in the status, rather than someone that's economically disadvantaged. And so that comes also into the fundamentalist theory, because that's how it runs. Deviance is natural, it is necessary, it is going to occur, and that's exactly what this is saying. And these are just 2 small diagrams I found online to kind of back that up. So finally, the continuation of the fundamentalist theory. The pros and cons of deviance. So deviance can be positive or negative, as we expressed earlier. So the pros of deviance, they aid in social change in economy. So this means that they push, because it's always changing, it pushes for that need to change in social, and it also pushes for the boosting economy because innovation and new ideas. It guides cultural norms and values. So this means that it's constantly changing, and if a majority of people change their views, then this will continue them to change their culture as a total. And then it unifies societal views. So this means that once a majority agrees on what they agree on, it's going to unify, and they're going to continue to push for it continuously. Now, when looking at the cons, it produces insecurity and tension, and that's more directed at the people that do not go with the societal view, and so they feel very left out because they are not on the inside group, they don't agree with what everyone's saying, but then to act against it, they look very different and they're called out, and so that can lead to reduces in confidence in institutions. And what that's saying is that when people feel left out in an institution, it decreases confidence in the value behind it and the willingness for people to accept it and use it and utilize it. And so that it kind of reduces the confidence, and that is really what it is, because society is constantly changing. And it gets rid of trust in personal and formal relationships. And life is similar to high school. Let's use that as a comparison. Everyone wants to be the popular kid. And so you may have this best friend you trust in middle school, and the minute you get to high school, they flip and they start following the social norms, and you're deviant and they are the head cheerleader, and you lose your trust in the relationships because you never know how it's going to be. You never know if you can trust them or not. So then you follow the social norms and your friends are deviants, and it just causes to where people aren't able to fully have that connection. So now to explain from the diagram in the top left, or the top right, law and policy, technology and design, market forces, and social norms. In the middle of these four mixtures, in the dead middle, is the perfect social norm, and everything outside of it is considered deviance. And that is because society has accepted these places where it meets in the middle, and it allows that to prosper. So it kind of goes, the law and the policy set the norms, the technology and design advance, and they set what is going to be the new trends and stuff like that. Market forces are if people can afford the product. If everyone can afford the product, everyone will have it, and then it will become more socially accepted and known. And that's the more social norms just come in, and they're the basis of it all. About how it's anticipated, is Apple more better than Android? Not more better. Is Apple better than Android? Which one's more accessible? Which one does everyone want? Which one is the social norm to have? And then that concludes the end of Deviance, and this is a sum up of how Deviance acts. And so here is my works cited page, and that is the end of this presentation. Thank you.